Well, it's carried on raining and lightning outside, and I thought, well, you know what? I'll just go ahead and draw this thing out. I've been meaning to do it for such a long time now. This is extremely rough. It looks even rougher because I had to shrink it down a little bit so you can see these top and bottom numbers, because I thought, well, if somebody wants to take a screenshot of this, they'll want all the numbers on it rather than me having to scroll up and down so you can see it. So anyway, it looks a little rough. It looked rough before I shrunk it. Now it looks even rougher. Anyway, what we've got here is I've stuck all three cycles together. Okay, so if you watch the channel, you know what I'm talking about. All three cycles. We're talking about the Fibonacci cycle, the Lucas cycle, and the pi cycle. And what I've done is I've overlaid each one to where we make a Vesica Pisces that, so we end up with, see, let's look at Fibonacci here in Lucas. What you'll notice is that this red circle is hitting the middle of the black circle here, okay? And then that's where I've started each cycle going, is where it starts in the middle of a circle here, okay? And then here's Fibonacci starting here, okay? So we have each individual cycle. So there's our 112 of Fibonacci. Here's our 314 of the pi cycle starting here, and then here's our 213 of Lucas numbers. You see that they're all emanating their cycles starting out like this in a sort of, almost, kind of some sort of spirally type pattern. I guess maybe a way of describing it, maybe not. But anyway, the idea is that stuff's in the middle of one another and it's starting from the center, moving out, yada, yada, yada. Does that make sense? I hope so. That's just the way I set it up. Obviously, now you could rearrange this several different ways, but I thought this was the most logical way to start with. Anyway, and I have tried rearranging it a few other orientations myself, but this is the one I want to show you. So what do we see? Because I wanted to mention about, let's just put it on black for a second, and well, maybe I ought to put it on some different color completely. Let's do like an orange. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you, you can now pick out numbers that kind of overlap in certain places, okay? So for instance, the last few videos where I've talked about Snatch, and Journeyman also mentioned the release of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, 823. Okay, so this is an intersection point, 823. Interesting that date is also Kobe Bryant's birthday. So 823, super duper important. Here's the 128 stuff, and again, who am I thinking? Matthew Perry died on 1028. Obviously I'm just, we're just picking out certain interesting things. Let's look down here at this intersection point with between pi and Fibonacci now, and what you'll see is if we read these numbers backwards, we've got 13 here in the blue and a 7, 137, the ear wound date, okay, with Donald Trump. And then of course we can come back this other way, 826, 628. We can pick out numbers there. We can also pick out this crossing here. Let's do this one with 911. Okay, so obviously 911 is one of those numbers that's crossing here on this point, and then the number it crosses is 775. Yeah, 775 right here. Now, okay, let me show you something that's really interesting with Back to the Future and all the references in Back to the Future to 9/11 and how 775 connects into that now. Okay, so let's get off of this for a second. Now let's go from 9/11 2001 and let's go 7,750 days. it brings us out at 11/30/2022. Okay, but 11/30, what is interesting about 11/30 is that is the Great Scott Day. That is St Andrew's Day, the Great Scott. Yeah, the patron saint of Scotland. Okay, so this is the Great Scott, this day here. Okay, as referenced in Back to the Future with the amount of times that Great Scott is said. Okay, so this becomes really interesting. I'll tell you what else. Let's just do 775 days from 9/11. Ah, look what day it comes out on. Okay, forget the year, but just look at the date here, 10/26. This is the day that Marty goes back to 1955 on this day, 10/26. Einstein is the first traveler on this date, and then Marty is the second. Okay, very, very interesting that that just happens to come out on that date. You know, so there's a lot of there's tons of interesting stuff that you can pick out of, this combination. And of course, the Holy Trinity, these points here, we can pick out some numbers. So let's write them down. So we've got 1, 7, okay, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then 3, 2. Okay, and I've numbered that in such a way that you can see, like, if we were just to pick the first number out of each cycle, if we pick the first number out of each cycle, this is what you end up with. And then the intersecting number, okay, is our 237. Room, okay, 237 here. Or is the room 237 the inversion of 1, 2, 3? The perfect trinity, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Start and end. Okay, and then our 237 is kind of I don't know how you'd even want to think about it. Some kind of metaphysical version of that. I don't know. You could pick one out as like, I don't know, but it's just a corresponding number, isn't it? Okay, so room 237. So this is just interesting, and obviously number 2332 and number 17 there, and so you can kind of pick and choose some numbers out of that, but it is just fascinating. Other intersection points, 7, 4, 2, 9, which would be very interesting. Again with the 9/1 reference for the starting of the cycle again, coming up the 1st of September, because of course that would also re-reference this point here, 9 going into 1, beginning the cycle again. Okay, and then the other intersection point here, 5, 9. If you watch We Seek, We Find stuff, super important. Okay, and if you look around these cycles, you'll see certain numbers. The Donald Trump ear wound one is pretty mental with 9/11 on here, and of course that leads us to this set of numbers here, the 8/21. That date's coming up, and of course you can switch these numbers around. The 8th of December, 8/12. 8/23, or maybe can't really switch that one too much because 8 is a bit of an awkward one. But yeah, again, you could potentially have 3/28 there, I guess. But fascinating stuff. Anyway, I thought that was worth showing you, and of course you can add up. I've done all this stuff like adding between these dates and seeing what numbers come out and all this stuff. And I say dates, adding between the points between there, and so you can do several different things to decode that further. But I just wanted to basically just show you the basics of it first, before we get any more technical with it. But you see certain numbers. If you look at this just for a few minutes, you will start to see certain numbers that pop out here and there that were fairly important. Look again with Fibonacci here, coming down from this intersection point here, and we've got the 415. Yeah, again with like Titanic sinking or Notre Dame fire. And so there's lots and lots of bits and pieces you can pull out of here. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about it, really. It's just fascinating. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on another video, fairly shortly. Cheers. All right, bye.